My name is Thomas Gooding, and this is a review for Star Wars The Last Jedi, which is the second installment in the sequel trilogy of the Star Wars saga. It follows mostly the same characters. Here's a quick summary. The movie opens on the Resistance trying to fly away from the First Order, and they do this by attacking the ship and then trying to use hyperspace to get away. At this point, the Resistance is very depleted and has very few ships and very few people. They escape through hyperspace, yet they get tracked down through it. Deplete. In order to combat this, Finn and his new friend Rose go to a planet called Cantobite to find a hacker to get onto the First Order ship and disable the tracking device. While this is happening, Rey is trying to find and get training from Luke Skywalker, who has isolated himself after his failure with his student Kylo Ren, formerly known as Ben Solo. First, I'm going to talk about what I liked about the movie. The movie's visual effects were astounding. This is most evident in the final scene when the new captain sacrifices herself by using the hyperdrive to slice through the enemy's ship. It is visually amazing, and the rest of the movie does not disappoint as well. Another very good part of this movie is the dynamic between Rey and Kylo Ren. They share this bond that's through the Force, where they never see each other in person, but they talk to each other and they can feel each other's presence. This dynamic is very strong, as they're essentially two sides of the same coin. Kylo Ren and Rey are actually both fueled by anger, yet Kylo Ren has given into it and Rey is still resisting. Kylo Ren's whole point is to try to get Rey to join him, as he sees their similarities, and this is done very well throughout the movie. I like the incorporation of this new idea that these two people can communicate through the Force across great distances, and how they can share the same surroundings yet being completely different places. It expands on the idea of the Force, which is something that, as the viewer, a lot of people don't understand. And so by having these new concepts, it does very well with that. Now, my biggest issue with this movie, and the whole sequel trilogy, in fact, is the disregard for Finn's character development from the first movie. In the first movie, he runs away from the First Order as he gets some sort of feeling, assumingly from the Force, telling him to run away. So he escapes with Poe Dameron. But the entire movie, he's just continuously running and not seemingly having a purpose. But by the end of the Force Awakens, he has found a purpose with the Resistance and with Rey by fighting. Yet, in the first, 10 minutes of this movie, he wakes up a bumbling idiot and tries to abandon the Resistance for no other reason than to quote-unquote save Rey, even though she's a very capable Jedi. All of the marketing from the first movie led the audience to believe that Finn would be a very important character in the series. And this movie is very evident of them just not caring about him. Now, this could be for a multitude of reasons. His arc got cut for time or just lack of interest in certain groups. But the real issue is possibly his race and his marketability. And that's the real issue with this movie. They make him incompetent. He cannot do anything for himself. Stormtroopers are well trained. He had so much potential as a character. He felt something in the Force telling him to not shoot innocent people, telling him to leave the Resistance. He felt something in the Force, and they disregard that completely. He has so much potential. He wields a lightsaber multiple times in the first movie, as he feels some sort of connection to it. Even though it's not as strong as Rey's, there's still some connection. The next movie, he barely does anything. He has maybe one fight that he loses. He gets super lucky and gets a sucker punch on a clone trooper. That's his only thing. His character is further enabled by Rose, who is possibly the worst character written I have ever seen in Star Wars. worse than Jar Jar Binks, because Jar Jar Binks was supposed to be comedic. He was not supposed to be a serious character. This character, Rose, was supposed to be serious and was just terrible in every single way imaginable. What I mean by Rose enabling Finn's terrible character development is that in one of the final scenes of the film, Finn has a chance to redeem himself through self-sacrifice. He finally can show that he's not a coward and he will not run away and he will save the people that he loves. He is prepared to sacrifice himself by flying into a cannon and destroying it in order to save the resistance. It teases at this for so long, and at the very last second, Rose comes in and bumps him out of the way, and at the moment, seemingly dooms the entire resistance. And by undermining this sacrifice, it just ruins Finn's character, and the reason they give is, I guess makes sense, but it's just overall stupid. This takes us back to Canto Bight and that pointless mission to find a hacker in order to get onto the First Order ship to disable the tracking device that tracks them through hyperspace. However, instead of them, finding some speedy thing where they can go onto the ship, they drag out the Canto Bight mission, making them go through this whole thing, and where Disney can just spread their message of propaganda and random things that aren't related to Star Wars whatsoever. It is basically 30 minutes of bashing capitalism in general, and then 2 sentences about war profiteering just out of nowhere. It makes no sense. It is completely worthless, and it's not that politics aren't involved in Star Wars, because they are. The entire prequel trilogy had so much politics in it, but it was irrelevant to the story and distracted the audience from the main message of the movie. And this distraction is not even fun. The audience is bored throughout most of it. To make matters even worse, they don't even find the person they're looking for. They get captured or in jail and luckily find some other hacker, and they break free and escape because of that hacker and BB-8. And BB-8 has just been kind of messing around and doing whatever, and then he just comes out of nowhere and saves them. Okay. And it happens again later in the movie when they are essentially about to be executed by the First Order, when, of course, their plan doesn't work to disable the hyperdrive tracking. And so their whole plan just was irrelevant, which makes that whole journey irrelevant. And so the audience just wasted 30 minutes, essentially. The bad storytelling of the side mission is just a distraction to the movie, and they only make out of pure luck, and it's very infuriating for the audience. And the worst part is it could have been avoided. Admiral Holdo is a new character in the series, and she has some sort of secret plan to get them out of this mess, but does not tell anybody. Specifically Poe Dameron. Poe Dameron is an excellent pilot, not a great strategist, but he's very passionate about the Resistance, and he does whatever he can to help. Vice Admiral Holdo refuses to share information with him, leading him to start a mutiny and create unnecessary tension that seems worthless in the movie and seemed to be avoidable through simple logic and reason. It could have been avoided had Holdo just told her his plan. And they give no reason why she didn't tell him his plan. No reason whatsoever. Had there been a spy on the ship, I don't know, maybe, but they give no reason. She just doesn't tell him for whatever reason, and that just causes an infinite amount of problems. And that kind of lazy writing is why this movie is struggling. It has some very good aspects, and in its attempt to subvert expectations, it fails miserably. It is trying to say this new Vice Admiral Holdo, who's a woman, is powerful and doesn't need to respond to Poe Dameron. Doesn't need him. But in that effort, it's completely invalidating Poe Dameron as a character who is established. How as the audience are we supposed to trust Vice Admiral Holdo when she doesn't even trust a person we already know as a character? It's lazy. Overall, the movie is poorly planned out. The dialogue is okay, but the plot itself has so many holes and is just ridiculous and pointless to a fault, especially when you take into account the other 2 movies. It is essentially erased in the next movie, becoming meaningless. And it essentially erases what was done in the first movie, what was set up in the first movie. In the first movie, it was set up a big deal about who Rey's parents were. In an attempt to subvert expectations, they say, oh, Rey has no meaningful parents. Well, that's okay. But in the first movie, they bring up Finn as a possible Jedi and someone who could be very powerful. In an attempt to subvert expectations, they make him a terrible character. Poe Dameron, who is seen as the leader of the Resistance, is then basically undercut by Vice Admiral Holdo in an attempt to subvert expectations. But their attempt to subvert expectations leads them alienating the audience. The audience is left just sitting there wondering what is happening and why is it happening, because it does not do a good job explaining it. Overall, I would give this movie a 65. Barely fresh. Barely adequate. I think it is very visually astounding. The music is very good. And their expansion of the Force was very well done. But that does not save the movie. While these aspects were very good and well done, overall, the movie misses on all marks when it comes to being a Star Wars fan and enjoying all the previous movies and